Please go here. I'm guessing you can hear it now. Check 1, 2. Yeah. So really quickly, I better flip through the cameras and make sure that no matter where we're at, that is pulling from the correct source. So 1 second here. Yep. Yep. A lot of cameras. Yep. Eight. 9. Cool. I think we're good. So give me 1 second. Let's set up that front camera. That's going to be real fun today, and we'll jump right in. Luckily, not a super big lift to get that moving, so we can play with this a little bit. Let's jump right in. I'm excited to open this setup. I think it's been a while since I did a Bricklink Designer Program set, and a lot of them have been pretty awesome. They go through pretty rigorous Lego quality control before they finally make it. Some of the buildings can get a little interesting because they maybe don't follow the same sort of stability rules that we would expect, but when it comes to things like this, they tend to work out pretty well. Let's get this opened up. Okay, so a couple of things we saw right off the bat there that are pretty interesting. Let's go ahead and switch this up. We can want to make sure we can see the instructions as we're working through. We'll go like that for now, or maybe like that for now. I don't think we need the aerial quite yet. And there we go. So instructions are up. So something right off the bat you're going to notice about these Bricklink Designer Program sets, since we haven't looked at one in a while, is these are not actually going to come with an instruction manual at all. They're going to come with a link that basically says, hey, please open this up on Lego's little phone building app. I love that the phone building app exists, but it also kind of drives me a little bit nutty. Here we can see the overview of everything we're going to be looking at today. It kind of drives me a little bit nutty because it's like you have to like manually use like your touch screen and like click through every step, and it really slows me down compared to, you know, using either the traditional instructions or even better, like we're doing right now, having them loaded up on a web screen where I can just click, click, click right through. And I always think that that's pretty neat. So I try to avoid using that app whenever possible. But when it comes to these Bricklink sets, there's really no way around it except for except for really kind of scouring the internet and finding the places where people have sort of put those parts up already. So let's see. Working a little bit closer than we sometimes do today, but here's kind of our main screen there. And every now and then we'll flip and we'll give the aerial view as we start seeing some of this come together. But yeah, so a couple things we noticed when we opened up that bag there. One, we've got two little bags with sort of the extra special parts, including a cow and a horse, which is pretty neat. It's still fairly rare to get Lego cows. They still tend to be pretty valuable. Here we got a squirrel in a sort of a, what color is this? Sort of a tannish brick kind of color. But yeah, and the designers of these Bricklink sets, they do tend to sort of use those sets as an opportunity to kind of, you know, throw in some rare animals, you know, things like seagulls and the like wherever they can. So this time it looks like we're getting at least a squirrel, a cow, and a horse, and I think that's pretty neat. So I'll go with this. And actually, we loaded up a brand new playlist for this one. So we're going to experience this one together. Let's give that a refresh. And let's try it out. Did we not save this yet? Should be easy enough. We're going to say... Cool. So this is our Epic Battle soundtrack. This is our new... when we have to work on medieval or maybe some fantasy things. We've got sort of coastal fantasy and pirate time, but we didn't have just sort of a default fantasy playlist quite yet. But now we should, as soon as it publishes, at least. Da-da-da-da. That's it. Trying to remember where the button is for downloading the whole playlist at once and saying, yeah, that's good. This works for us. Yes, it is fine. I would like to use it. Let me use it. This seems pretty good. Minor technical difficulties. Be right back. All right. I don't know why that took. I had to kind of do that process manually this time, so that was annoying and time consuming. But now I think we're ready with a nice little bit of background music, a new playlist, fully ready to go. All right, so let's see. Looks like we're starting with sort of the little tree, in the tent here. Like I said, we'll just keep this pretty basic. Now this thing is huge, and that's kind of a commonality of the Bricklink Designer Program sets, is that oftentimes they are just absolutely massive, sort of in terms of like their part counts, because the designers are like, again, I'm gonna stick as much stuff as I can in here. I just want to get as much done as I can, get as much parts value. And that is actually one really cool incentive of being part of the Bricklink Designer Program as a builder, as a designer, rather, is if your set gets chosen, you like get something. I think it's 6 copies of the set, which is pretty neat. That's a nice way to say, hey, thanks for designing a Lego set for us for free. I'm like, okay, well. Now, funny enough, it does kind of look like I'm already messing up the instructions here, so let's kind of try it from this side. So we've got long, we've got 4 over there. Not sure why this is already confusing, but we're out of the flow, but we'll get into the flow. Ironically, having more trouble just following the designer program instructions here than we were doing all those crazy alternate floor plans the last 2 weeks and the alternate build the last 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, but it's all good. I think that's what they had us doing, and then we put this in and then this down. Yeah, it's a little different. So then we can put one of these like this, I think. And that is back to matching, so yes. Already our playlist is definitely sounding like we're a, you know, our medieval peasant at the fair or whatever it is. All right. So yeah, I don't know if I'm going to actually have so much valuable commentary about this set. We'll kind of see, you know, how far we're able to get with it, what we think about the build experience. Trying to think back to some of the other Bricklink Designer Program sets that I've made so far. There's a couple... I don't think I need that right now. There's a couple commonalities in the experience that I've noticed so far. So one, they're all huge. They all use sort of way more parts than you would expect for whatever they're building. So we built the Wild West General Store. It had a really cool wooden baseboard, wooden floor that I thought was really neat, but it did take a long time to build it, because that was an example of sort of almost what I would call like a part inflation, where they took a floor, a wooden floor that could have been built with, you know, a couple of base plates or whatever, and they instead made it out of a bunch of tiles and parts, which for I don't want to say official Lego sets because these are official Lego sets, but for retail, there we go, retail Lego sets, like you wouldn't do that because you don't want to inflate the part count. You just get, you know, angry moms and dads being like, why is this so big when all that you're giving us is a bunch of 1x1 tiles or whatever? So that's definitely something they can do different in the designer program for sure. Wow, this is, speaking of which, I'm already this is not as quick as I would expect because, again, like the work here is really meticulous. These are advanced level sets, so everything you're doing is a high part count per page of instructions, a lot of really intricate detail already, even though we're literally just building the sort of the hay roll beneath a tent that the knights would sleep in or anything. We also don't have a minifigure in the first bag, which is something that you would typically expect from a play set. I also noticed that there's a couple of stickers here, so we see that there are stickers for both the Falcon Knights and the Lion Knights, two sort of classic Lego factions that have been getting a lot of attention lately. And I think the idea is this is a siege from one faction to the other, but I also think it's really neat that clearly they're giving us the option to, you know, you can make whichever one the defender and whichever one the attacker that you want. Now, the minifigures we're going to get with this expansion are all going to be Falcon Knights, but in terms of actually putting the different banners and flags on the siege equipment, they're not really limiting you. They're not saying they're trying to, you know, direct it too thoroughly. They're kind of letting you have the choice of which one you want to be the aggressor and which one you want to be the defender. And I'm like, that's a nice touch. It would have been kind of annoying if you wanted to use, you know, the one faction and you only got the flags for the other one. So I think that was a pretty good compromise to say we're just going to give both. We're just going to give both. And let you kind of use your imagination and choose which one you want. Because, you know, maybe I don't even want the Falcon Knights to be fighting the Lion Knights. Maybe I want the Lion Knights to be going off on an expedition and bothering some goblins or some orcs or something like that, which also reminds me of something else with this city I want to talk about as well, too. So having the option to put up either flag is pretty nice, actually. Okay, so now this time we're going to use a 4 wide and a 2 wide. That's going to be a little bit different. But yeah. Okay, so I mean, again, as far as builds go, this is a pretty basic sort of tent that we're constructing here, but really intricate flooring. So again, like you could imagine this in like a Lego Friends set or something being built with very few pieces. Looks like it's locked in on this side. And sort of what you get is the option to just open the other side up so you can kind of see what's going on. I don't know that that's a choice I would have made, but it works. All right, so now we get a squirrel, and we're getting 2 nuts, which again, like, I feel they're just saying, hey, we think that the nut tile piece is really cool, so let's include an extra one. Now we're going to get an archery target here, which is a kind of cool choice since, you know, we're imagining the medieval battlefield. We want our archers learning how to hit as many targets as possible. And then I guess a little bit of extra foliage to kind of tie this thing together. And it's a nice little build. So how is this going to work in my city? So we've been making a couple of interesting changes to sort of the scope of the fantasy factions and so on. And that actually came out of the fact that I've been working on Blacktron, and then off screen I also worked on Blacktron 2 Lego space sets for much of the last month, actually, and was really enjoying the process of going through all that Blacktron stuff. And it sort of had me thinking, because historically what I would do, I didn't really have a whole lot of Lego space sets that were not Star Wars. So historically I kind of just had maybe like one per faction. So like I had one Insect Knight set and like one Life on Mars set, and then Mars Mission is kind of an exception, but that was kind of the idea. All right, how they got this oriented here. They can always be tricky when you're working with plants with foliage. Yeah, there we go. And then there should be a space for the bird right here. Put that through the trunk. I feel like I've built a lot of Lego trees recently. I'm not exactly sure why. It's just a lot of Lego sets that are supposed to be, you know, urban, rural or suburban. They like to kind of give you some trees so that you kind of have some variation in the build besides just building a building, which is funny because I tend to rip the trees out and use them in my forest, my giant forest section instead. And I really love working with my forest because everything else in my Lego cities is so gridded. It's all on this very precise 16 by 16 grid. And the forest is the only section where I'm just like, hey, I'm going to plop this tree here and this tree here. And you can imagine like a big green base area. And then you just start plopping trees down and it starts to look like a patchwork forest. It's what nature designed instead of, you know, some kind of man-made or Lego man-made. It's a lot less stressful to work with that. So whenever I see sets like this that, you know, there's some extra trees and things, and I might want to be using, where's this one going to go? I think this peg is going to go right through here, which is a little interesting. Like that. Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to make a bird nest out of this sort of like scarf shawl collar, which is kind of funny because for me this piece I associate with being like a you know, like a fur coat, like a fur collar, like Kraven the Hunter, the Spider-Man villain. He's like, I think that this little fur mantle is used for his purposes as well. And again, here in this build, since it's Bricklink Designer Program, we've got 2 of these red birds already instead of them just giving us one and saying use your imagination that there's more than one. There's a nice little bird's nest. Let's make sure that it's vertical so the bird doesn't have a problem. And then we can plop it down right here. Yeah, so that's it. That's literally the first bag, and the first bag is one contained build. So I'll plop those extra pieces over to the side, dive right into number 2. So another thing that we saw with this build already was you saw when I was opening up, you can see I'm in the rhythm of it now, when I was originally opening up the bags, there was sort of that first little white box. Here's our archer, by the way, to play with that archery target. There was that first little white box that had about, I think I'm counting 16 total bags over there that we're going to start with. So they're not even just plopping all the bags down in one box. They're putting some of the first 16 bags in one little sub box, and then over on the side, still in the primary box, we've got the remaining probably 20-ish bags. So it's a lot of bags. It's a really big set. And that's another trend with Bricklink Designer Program. A lot of pieces, really, really big boxes. So it always really takes up a lot of my space whenever a new Bricklink Designer wave comes out that I've gotten more than one set for, because the boxes are huge. So you kind of just got to open those up and get those built, which is kind of exactly what we're doing here. And really for a lot of the rest of December, I did just post the December Scream schedule over on my Instagram account. And we're doing this week. And then next Saturday, we'll be looking at the Wild West train. So another Bricklink Designer Program train. That'll be the second Bricklink Designer Program train that we've done since we started streaming here. And let's see, we have a Christmas stream. And then the final Sunday of December is also going to be a Bricklink Designer Program set. It's going to be the Thieves of Tortuga, sort of the pirate hideout set that came out relatively recently that was just wildly popular. And I was, again, really, really lucky to get my hands on a copy of that. And really excited to go ahead and build that set, although we're going to have to wait till we get there to talk about where exactly we're going to incorporate that into the city. So before we come back to that, take a sip. Before we come back to that, it looks like, what are we doing here? This is actually kind of neat. It looks like we're making sort of a very traditional, sort of like medieval, staked stakes where you can't ride your horses over this area because instead you got to like come in and manually dismantle the stakes. Great example of, it's not an iconic small, big or giant warfare thing like a trebuchet or a catapult, but this is something that would be there. And this is also something that a lot of us who enjoy, like video games from this era immediately recognize as like, oh, I've got a base. I got to put some traps around my base so that, no zombies. Like for me, this makes me think of the video game 7 Days to Die, which is sort of, kind of like a Minecraft-y sort of that kind of thing. And I'm like, oh yeah, I got these stakes. I gotta get my base ready. So here's our first set of them. Let's plop it down like so. 1, 2. And I really love when we have Lego elements, there we go, that are really tactile, that, feel really fun to touch. And these rubbery tan pieces at the tips of the spikes, which are sort of supposed to represent the sharpened wood, very, very tactile, really fun to sort of play with. Now, they seem to be telling me to keep this minifigure separate, but for now, I'm just going to kind of put it in the same bag that it was built with, put her in the same bag that she was built with. So let's say she's behind this stake. We'll put her there. Let me go to bag 3. So there's a ton of bags, but because there are so many bags, because there are almost 40 bags here, they're never giving us, you go to step 3, and step 3 is 2 bags. It's 1 step, 1 bag. With sometimes some mini bags inside of them, which means that we're actually going to go through this relatively quickly now that we're en route. Okay, so it looks like the next thing we're making is something of almost a medieval market. Maybe a refueling station. We'll see as we get a little bit further in. Again, we've got this super intricate ground, whereas, in a retail or commercial retail set, you might expect all of this to just be like one 16 by 16 base plate, which we've got one that we're going to get to later. But a lot of these are going to be a lot more intricate, which is different, but really creates some opportunities for quite varied terrain. That feels like not the right amount. So I think what they were actually telling us was to go ahead and open up this cool parts bag here and pull out that long, maybe 2x12 or 2x14 dark tan plate that's in here. So we'll grab that. Set those aside. Oh wow, this is actually a new cow mold for me. This cow mold over here has udders. So it's saying, hey, that's a girl cow. So that was probably something new that was created in 2023 for the Lion Knights Castle, which is sort of promotionally associated with this set. Again, you have the Falcon Knights sieging, laying siege to the Lion Knights Castle. I did not end up getting the Lion Knights Castle. I have some older castles that I think make a little bit more sense in my setup. And I do think that it is preparing to retire at the end of this year. So if anybody's watching this and thinking, oh yeah, well, I thought that Lion Knights was cool, but I haven't picked it up yet, that's your sign and your message to go ahead and get on that before it's too late. But I will not be doing so myself. Let's go ahead and finish out this bag here. Okay, so now we've got some very, very intricate pebble work, some cobblestone work, which I've done some cobblestone work on stream before, and I enjoy doing it. But what they've done here is they picked 4 different colors, so sort of a tan or a mossy green, a slate blue, and then of course light bluish gray and dark bluish gray. I think in my medieval section where I've got sort of the full cobblestone roads, I really just went with the light bluish gray and the dark bluish gray. I know it can be a nice pop of color to add this extra green and the extra blue, but the way I was kind of thinking about it, I just felt like we didn't really need too much besides the basic colors. So we'll keep doing it the way that they do. I guess we can justify this and say, I mean, this is, this is on an open plain. They're in the middle of a siege here. It's going to be a little bit more, moss and lichen and stuff like that compared to the roads in the village or in the town square where, you've got horses clopping on through. This goes down here. Constantly disturbing the road or so on. So again, we're not even completing this little market stall within this scope of this one bag. It's going to continue to be built up as we go along here. And those are our extra pieces. Drop those to the side. We're going through the bags almost quicker than... A lot of them are very small, so... And I do think I've got a hard stop, mildly hard stop at 4 o'clock Eastern today. So we're only going to be going for another hour and 20 minutes. Again, just kind of giving a sample of what this particular Bricklink Designer Program set looks like, what the build experience is like, and sort of we'll pause at the end and we'll kind of evaluate how we feel about it. That's a new head for me. Actually, all of these minifigure parts right here are... This is a totally new one for me. Looks kind of interesting. Blacksmith gal ready to assemble something for us. So I was talking about Lego Blacktron and all the Blacktron work, all those spaceships that we were building over the last, pretty much the whole last month, and sort of what that was about. Again, I have to kind of pay attention because there's some very intricate part work here. So I'll kind of slow down and try to talk through what that was about exactly. So again, historically, things like Lego Blacktron, things like Lego Space Sets, Mars Mission, Life on Mars, Insectoids. Again, I wasn't around for the 80s Lego sets, but the very late 90s space stuff I did catch. And I've kind of had my interest renewed in that at the end of last year when they released the Blacktron Gift with Purchase and then the Blacktron Renegade, which if you haven't seen my video or my Instagram on that, I just thought that the Blacktron Renegade was one of the coolest things they've done in a very long time. So I really enjoyed going through and building that and then posting about that as well. So that meant that I went through and I kind of got all these classic Blacktron sets and a bunch of Blacktron 2 sets and even a couple of sets from other space eras as well. And sort of the net effect of all that was it kind of goes, okay, well, previously I only had one-offs of those space sets. So it kind of made sense to just, kind of dump them in a pile and say, that's my Lego space, but it's not really connected to the city. But I didn't know if that was going to make quite as much sense when it came to suddenly having every Lego Blacktron set that had ever been made or so on. Especially because as I started to look at those classic space Lego sets, I realized that, there were a lot of classic space Lego factions. Futuron, Spyrius, Blacktron, Space Police 2, and so on and so forth, all back in releasing between 88 and 98, I guess. Wow, we've got a really, really big bonfire that we've created here. It's like a 3x3 internal. We're going to add all these fires. So we're thinking this is probably going to be warm enough to heat up whatever they want to cook or whatever they want to smith here, which is pretty cool, actually. I think I need 3 long pipes, not 4 long. Yeah, this is going to be one of the bigger Lego bonfires I've seen, for sure. Look at that. It's pretty big. Okay, here's our tall ones. I mean, gosh, it's so tall. This almost looks like they're getting ready to burn somebody at the stake here. Like, you could almost imagine, plop this down, and then you put somebody on there, and a little bit of dark humor. All right, so obviously we need a very hot fire. I don't know if you can create a fire in the field so hot as to actually forge weapons and melt metal, but maybe that's a little bit of a Lego artistic liberty here that the designer was taking. We'd have to get our blacksmithing experts in here to comment on that one. But we'll allow it. It's the field station. It's just for, repairing dents in the swords, not for making new ones, we'll say. This animal's going to be freestanding right there. Get a little bit of foliage as we start to close out this bag. So, okay, so I'm looking through these old Lego space sets, and I'm learning about all the 1980s Lego space factions. And what I'm starting to realize that, again, everybody who was around for that already knows this, but what I was starting to realize is, whoa, every single one of these alien factions or human factions, they had like a big base. So with Blacktron, we got to see on stream, I think we built the Blacktron message interceptor base. And then Blacktron 2, similarly, they had a base of operations that usually fit on a 32 by 32 Lego moon crater base plate. The Blacktron message interceptor base was kind of a nuisance because instead of a 32 by 32, it was actually 64 by 32. So definitely taking up a little bit more space than would be typical. All right, here we got a bucket of water. I guess this is where you plunge the warmed metal in after you finish smithing it to cool it off and keep going. So again, lots of cool little details that the designer was trying to work with, from sort of stereotypical medieval warfare, medieval sort of almost fantasy, which is pretty appropriate for, I mean, this isn't exactly a play set, but you're really getting quite a lot to work with here that I think definitely expands sort of the arsenal of what's available. So here we've got a nice little armor stand that we've just constructed using some slightly new building techniques. And yes, I know I'm jumping between talking about this medieval stuff and talking about what I'm doing with Lego Space, but there's a reason why I've kind of got those two topics linked in my mind. Here's bag 5. We're going to continue building this place. Put the blacksmith here now that we've got a spot for her. So what's the linkage? So I'm looking through all this Lego Space stuff, and I'm realizing all these classic space factions have a base. And if they've got a base, so in my Lego City, I've got all these different areas that we sometimes talk about: medieval, residential, medieval cobblestone, downtown, uptown, midtown, beach, boardwalk, forest, which is the only ungridded area, industrial, airport, even a little bit of desert, which we've started to branch into more and more lately. So we've got all those different areas. And what I would be trying to do typically would be to incorporate as much as possible to incorporate any Lego set that I'm buying into the display, into the city. I want it to be one big unified Lego world, which is typically what you go looking for when you look at people's really cool displays of their Lego rooms, their, stuff like that. And so ideally, the only real things that aren't part of the Lego world, the only things that aren't really on display are the mix and matches, the pull in, pull outs. So there's a couple easy examples of that. So one easy example of that is Star Wars ships. I didn't necessarily want to set up a giant wasted, additional 10 foot by 10 foot place just to put a bunch of landed Star Wars ships. I'd rather, have the option to pick whatever Star Wars ships I want to display that day. Say that, okay, maybe there's a spaceport by the airport. Actually, on stream not too long ago, we built an Imperial hangar that went really, really well. It was a complete custom build just on a little 32 by 32 base plate. So, I can put that down in the city near the airport, and I can put, one TIE fighter there, and it's definitely effective. But I don't have to, go through all the time and effort and parts to make, 100 more of those. Got a lot of different types of Lego swords here, too. This is very neat. To make 100 more of those Star Wars hangars, what I can do instead is I can have just, a little storage bin. Do I have one near me? I don't have one near me. A little storage bin with a bunch of other TIE fighters in it. And I can say, okay, every now and then I might want to switch out which TIE fighter is currently on display. And it accomplishes the same thing. So on the one hand, city, where everything that I'm buying can go into there. Nothing is for display. Everything is for play, for being part of the larger display. And on the other hand, I can still buy the extra, Lego TIE fighters in our example here. And I can just kind of rotate out which one is on display. So that applied to Star Wars ships. That applied to just, literally just the vehicles. Like, what truck is in front of this building? Well, I don't want to have a giant parking lot that's taking up a bunch of space in my display. That can be kind of cool. Some people put that on a shelf or something like that, but I just want it to be one continuous world. So again, I have a storage bin with 20 other Lego trucks. And, if this street needs a truck in front of it, I can go, all right, we'll put that one for now. And maybe every now and then I'll go in and I'll swap out and grab the box and pick up a different truck and put it in front of that building. So the only things that were in those, storage bins, kind of following that storage, swap in, pull out model, were Star Wars ships, trucks, cars, construction vehicles, that sort of thing. And then my fantasy factions. And what do I mean when I say factions? I mean, the idea would be there's a bunch of Lego sets, like collectible minifigures and things, or I might start accumulating a bunch of goblins, for example, as we play a song that kind of sounds like goblins sneaking around the battlefield. There we go. So the idea is we have the Knight's Castle. Like I said, I have an older Knight's Castle that came before the nice big Lion Knight Castle that was published recently. So I've got an old castle from the early 2000s, and there's going to be a place in the city for that castle. And I can swap out, first of all, which Knight faction is running the castle at a given time. So who's defending the castle at the moment? Okay, let's say it's the Lion Knights. All right, second, who's creeping through the forest and coming to attack that castle, or creeping up the hill and coming to attack that castle? Today, maybe it's the goblins. Tomorrow, maybe it's the Sahagin. Actually, Lego has not made any good Sahagin. It's something that bothers me. Maybe it's the Naga. Maybe it's the orcs, and you can swap those out in the same way I might swap out which Star Wars vehicle is in the hangar, or which truck is in front of a building. And so it's all very continuous, which I think is cool. This sword doesn't go here as well as they think it does. That's fine. There we go. We're going to plop this down? We are. Again, this is all just loose parts with some sort of base platey area on top of them. So for me, if I was going to take these things, I would probably basically make a clearing in the forest, which is this siege encampment. And again, maybe this siege encampment is in a clearing in a forest that is pretty close to the Knight's Castle. See, guys, I landed the plane. We made it all connect the way I was trying to make it connect here. Trying to think of where I was going with that last little piece there. Okay, so historically, the factions, whether it's factions of knights, which I kind of put all my knights together, I'm not as interested in. Actually, Lego just really doubled down on this whole, like, lots of different knight factions. Like, we just introduced the Kraken Knights, I think was the newest one, and the Horse Knights. I think those are the two new factions in 2025. They'll probably get me. They haven't gotten me yet. For now, I'm just like, knights are knights. You know, they're all in support of the kingdom. There's one king. They're not fighting other humans. They're mostly fighting, you know, bad guys. Maybe that's how my little kid imagination of the scenario works. So we had fantasy factions. So I could pull out the goblins, and I could pull out the orcs, and then I could pull out whoever. And then along comes... So two things happen at once. So I wasn't counting classic space sets as one of my factions. I was thinking of them as just... Honestly, I didn't really know what exactly I was going to do with them. But when I realized that all the classic space factions have bases, I kind of was struck by inspiration. I realized, well, you know, what we can do is we can have floating shelves around the area of the Lego city. And on every one of those floating shelves, it can be 10 inch by 10 inch, which is the size of a Lego 32 by 32 base plate. And they can basically be like hostile asteroids or hostile moons or whatever. So, oh my gosh, this is cool. We're making like a big old Lego halberd here. Very neat. There's that. And another sort of pole arm here. Another super big. What would I call this? Thinking back to my Dwarf Fortress days here. So we have a halberd, and we have like a something else. Put that down. This is the kind of place that if you're playing like Skyrim or something, you come across this and you go, "Oh man, I'm going to get a really cool weapon from this weapon lady." It does look like I maybe missed one or two parts here. Let's see if we can track down where those were. Yeah, they're up top here. Oh, that's going to be annoying. Slip this in here. Sorry, Mr. Halberd number 1 and Halberd number 2. Slip that one in there. Yeah, one casualty. Put this back down. And a trident or maybe a pitchfork might be how they're thinking of that. And a bunch of extra loose weapons that, you know, are just great to have on hand in sort of my spare parts for the constantly mentioned goblin army or whatever. Here we go. 3 things that we've sort of built so far. All looking pretty cool. On to bag 6. Again, super small bag. It's quantity of bags, not... So really, the amount of bags, you almost might say this is like kind of like divided by 2. So maybe you think of it as like a 20 bag set or a 25 bag set instead of a 40 or 38 or whatever they're actually offering in there. So yeah. Put this guy together. He's got a nice beard. Almost looks like a tall dwarf or something like that. There we go. Jolly fellow. Kind of looks like a wild warrior here. He's going to have a really cool helmet. Almost like a Viking style. So we'll see. Is this a visiting mercenary who's helping out the Falcon Knights, or what is he? Wow, even dual molded boots down here. That's pretty neat minifigure to be adding. Looks like he's here to shop for additional weapons. Now here we've got what looks like cannonballs, so going to be wondering what we're going to do with that. And now it looks like we're going to need to pull out that horse because we're making some kind of siege equipment or siege cart. Horse mold pretty much unchanged since the 90s, minus the ability of the back legs to move, which is pretty neat. And the head to go down and up as well. So everybody's got a base. So the idea was we create these asteroids for all those space factions, or asteroids or moons or whatever. So just like we have the idea of the castle could be invaded by various different fantasy factions, similarly we have the idea that the spaceport could come under attack from various different alien factions. Blacktron, insectoids, life on Mars aliens, friendly Mars aliens, whatever. And I like that because, again, what we're getting out of all of that is this sort of contiguous fantasy vision that's very swappable. It really has a lot of play value despite being a display city. So what that functionally meant was, just like I've got some nice storage bins where I keep the cars, the trucks, the Star Wars ships divided by faction, Geonosians, Separatists, Rebels, First Order, what have you. Similarly, I got 2 more of those big bins. I think 2's going to probably do it for now. One for basically space faction bad guys, and one for space faction good guys, which I'm not exactly sure if I have too many of those besides, like I said, the friendly Life on Mars faction. But yeah, so it's neat that I get to incorporate those in the city. And then here's where we're going to land the plane here and connect all these different seemingly random ideas. All that was perfectly well, because then I had some smaller storage bins with some of the fantasy factions. So you have one size for fantasy factions, which are people, and one size for ships, Star Wars ships, cars, trucks, and now the classic space heroes and villains. And then along comes this set. And what is this set? This is sort of a medieval castle fantasy type of set with siege weapons, which are vehicles. So I was like, oh, shoot. How does this fit into everything? Now, of course, I could ignore it. I could just, like we said, I could just set this up in the middle of the forest somewhere and say that, anybody can come along and inhabit the siege engines. Like, honestly, it is pretty cool to think about this. And actually, I started that sentence as if I was going to say, but instead I had another amazing idea. No, actually, I kind of think that's what it's going to be. I kind of like the idea of this having a dedicated spot in the forest, which is almost like the siege spot, sort of facing the medieval castle. And, somebody comes along, and they're going to pick up this siege equipment, and they're going to see if they can take the castle. Again, I think that'll be pretty... I think it'll add a nice little something. So, in other words, I started the stream today, and I was going to say something about, like, oh, no, so maybe I'll make, like, one more of the vehicle bins, but it'll be for siege weapons and horses and things like that. And actually, now that we're talking about it, I'm like, no, this is just, I'm going to treat this like a forest set. I'm going to set it in the ungridded forest. I'm going to give it an allocated clearing where anybody can come in and pick up these siege weapons and try to take the castle. You can almost have sort of like a continuous siege kind of idea out of that, which I think is pretty neat. I like that idea a lot. That also means something else that's really, really convenient for me, which is that I don't need to modify this set. And when I first look at this, and one of the reasons I chose it for stream was I was kind of thinking, oh, well, what I might need to do is take off the greenery, take off the base plates, and let this base plate stuff be existing in the forest, but separate it. Just like last week we separated the up house from its foundation because we were going to put it on a totally different type of foundation, moving it from the residential area to the city instead. And this way, I don't need to do that at all, which means I actually don't need to make a single modification to this set. I can just continue whipping through it exactly the way the instructions intended. So that's pretty much what we're going to do. I don't really have a lot of medieval stuff. In fact, actually, my castle stuff, my medieval stuff, besides a few of my medieval buildings, is all still in my deep storage in another state, and is actually pretty much the last set of Lego from my childhood that hasn't been brought to my display or my work areas here. So, kind of getting the ideas set in stone for how that's going to be used in the eventual city, which is not something I had figured out 2-3 years ago when I started planning this all, helps because I kind of know what to do with it if and when I bring it in. So, as we finish another bag there. Moving right on to bag 7. Tiny, tiny bag. So that's pretty much it. I don't know if I have any other really cool big ideas to share this time through. Like, from now on, we can kind of just look at this Bricklink Designer build and kind of talk about some of the build techniques we're seeing, whether we think it's particularly effective or not. Yeah, we actually do want to line this axle up. Again, the music getting pretty epic here, like they're in the middle of a battle. Yeah, I don't know why we had that difficulty with the music. I had to go in and manually create the playlist, even though it was otherwise ready to go. A little bit annoying. But we got there. And now we sound like we're deep in the midst of the epic confrontation. There we go. Okay, so we've got a rubber piece. And when you see a rubber piece or a rubber band, along with all this Technic, all these axles and things, you just know that you're about to get some kind of play function. So let's see what kind of play function we're going to get here. I'm still not quite sure what kind of cart this is that the horse is carrying. We saw those cannonballs earlier, but it doesn't really look like we're building a cannon. It seems a little small in size to be a catapult or a trebuchet. So maybe it's just some kind of small little arrow cart or something else. We're going to see. One of these. Let's put the 2 upside down. Whew, that was a lot of thoughts. But yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing, pretty much how we're... Oh, this is a catapult. Look at that. It's a simple little thing, but it gets the job done. Just a nice little small-scale horse-drawn catapult. Okay, now we need... From the stash, we need one of these strings. Now this is kind of neat. Let's see what we're doing here. But I have a suspicion. So, yep. Anyway, in summary, I think it's going to be really neat to just sort of have a clearing in the forest where all this siege equipment is set up. And we might shift it. You know, as of right now, they're giving it all this equipment as if the Falcon Knights are preparing to siege the Lion Knights. But for our display, I think that we're going to, you know, maybe the Falcon Knights are the advanced scouting party for the Lion Knights castle, and maybe they're out there on the front lines trying to stop whoever is setting up this siege encampment from causing too much trouble. And I think that might be another interesting way to tell the story. So now we'll get to test out this play feature here. Oh, that does work. Works rather well, actually. So the horse pulls the catapult into position, and then what you're going to do is we're going to use this winch, and we're actually going to wind up the catapult like so. And now I'm able to get a little bit more tension than I otherwise was. Aha! And here's our catapult balls that we did otherwise. Dump those out. Ready for this? Here's a play feature. That's got a pretty good shot to it, actually. Let's do that one more time. I want to see it on the big screen. So I start pulling the crank back. So this is really interesting. They actually made a catapult here that is actually working on pretty much the principles I would expect for a medieval catapult. There it goes. Cool. We'll definitely have some fun playing with this on Instagram later. So yeah, we'll pull the horse in and say, another bag down. Cool. On to the next bag. So now, again, talking about how we're sort of in this realm that kind of exists sort of in medieval, but also sort of in fantasy. Looks like the next thing we're going to be getting here is something like a potion cellar or something like that. Elixirs. We've got some very ornate symbols on this elixir cellar. It's always interesting seeing the minifigures that they pull from, since I don't think they can actually design a brand new minifigure piece. Actually, I don't believe that Bricklink Designer Program sets are allowed to have any new pieces created specifically for them. Maybe a printed piece every once in a while, but you can't, like, you know, make new minifigure parts, which is interesting because when I look at this character, I've never seen these pants or this shirt before. But maybe they're from, like, you know, some Ninjago peasant village or something or other that I just haven't seen. Put you back there, lady. So now what I'm thinking about is I'm thinking through let's think through who my different fantasy factions are, and maybe we can think about who we might want to have be the first faction to inhabit this. Thanks, Antilles. I'm enjoying this. I'm really looking forward to recording a bunch of takes of trying to shoot that trebuchet and maybe or catapult and knocking some things over. Now, it's only a 1x1 sort of bionicle joint, so it's not going to have a massive amount of destructive power, but I think we can still have some fun with it, for sure. So we've got... I'm actually trying to think, do I have very many Lego goblins yet? I mean, I guess I could do like a Bricklink tag search or something. I think I do have quite a lot of orcs. It's just like a question of like what army building have we done? I don't really feel like pulling up Brickset right now, but when I think about who's in, so it's really a question of who are my completed factions. And I actually think a lot of my completed factions are more of like my good guy factions. So I've got a big bag of hobbits. I've got a big bag of dwarves, and the dwarves sort of have the dwarves and the Naga both have a base. The Naga had the Ninjago Temple of the Silent Serpent or something like that, and the dwarves have the classic set Dwarves Mine from Castle Fantasy factions in the early 2010s, which is super, super cool. Something that I just always looked forward to getting. So that's something else. So this is sort of the next question that is raised. So we've solved the question of what are we doing with classic space factions. And we thought that we solved the question of what are we doing with our fantasy factions. But that's the next piece of the puzzle, is that our fantasy factions, another one we've got is just the fire faction. You got all these fire guys from what was that cool theme called? Lego Nexo Knights, for example. We had like an early version of a Balrog. Lego has since released their own Balrog, but like we had all these cool fire factions. So some of these factions actually have bases of their own. So the fire faction has Jestro's Volcanic Lair, which I think I did some stream work on early this year on volcano stuff. That sounds kind of familiar. The orcs have Mordor, Barad-dûr, which I built throughout last year and posted on Instagram. That was a really fun and cool build. Long build. I think that's the largest Lego set by part count that I've built, certainly, was that Barad-dûr. So that's another example of a fantasy faction that has a base. I could imagine one of my remaining White Whale sets is I would love to pick up Saruman's Tower. What's it called? Isengard. The Isengard Tower. Can't remember what it's called right now. But that's a bit of a tall order. Oh, I'm missing a barrel here. Oh, no, I just put that on. Got a nice tile piece here with, again, some sort of almost like Ninjago-y firework type designs, I'm thinking. You can't see this very easily. Maybe if I swapped it over to the big screen, but yeah. Oh, it does color match, to my surprise. So, if I'm talking about the factions being drop in, drop out, it's kind of hard to do that when some of the factions have actual bases. You know, it's not like, again, when we're thinking of the Lego City, it's not like it's easy to imagine the siege encampment being a permanent fixture in front of, say, the classic Knights Castle that I have. It's harder to imagine Barad-dûr just warping itself in and suddenly appearing in the clearing in front of the castle. That doesn't really work. So the guys, they have to come from somewhere. Oh, which is why this siege encampment is actually super cool. I'm actually wigging out, guys, because like actually you can imagine they're coming somewhere. It's like a MOBA or something. Like they're coming from their base, which is off screen, and then they land in the siege encampment and they're going to try to take the castle, and then they fail and then they go back away. It's got almost like a gameplay loop to it, almost like a MOBA, like League of Legends, or like a oh, what's that genre called? Like an RTS or something like that, where you kind of have this idea that's pretty cool and pretty consistent. You almost have like a gameplay loop, which again, like it's Lego. We want the idea of being able to do something to play with it somehow. So I like this idea. So what we have to do is we have to find homes for the actual factions, and we probably need to separate the faction bases and pull out the factions themselves. Maybe they leave a skeleton crew to defend their faction, because what you don't want if you're a hardworking Naga is, you went off to siege the castle, and next thing you know, the knights have come and they've taken your castle, and it's very awful. I think this goes like that, but it's a little unclear. It's also not a particularly stable design, but we'll take it. Maybe it's supposed to go in between the two, like this. I think it's more like that. Yeah. So we'll have the bases. Again, we're using the Naga as the example. Maybe they leave a skeleton crew behind to, protect it, but then they go off to do some sieging and some invading, which is pretty nice. And that way we can have some, like I said, those smaller bins that I've been talking about this whole time, and pretty much the only thing that's in there is sort of the ground troops. The ground troops, and then maybe the big monsters, because a lot of these factions, the fire faction has the Nexo Knights Balrog, and the Naga have like this giant serpent thing that was super cool, and maybe the hobbits, maybe they bring some Ents with them when they're traveling or something like that. I don't know. So then the only question is, for each of those fantasy bases, and again, like I said, right now the ones that are coming to mind are Mordor, hobbits, dwarves. We want to make sure that there's somewhere in the city where they can have a home, where they can feel, where they can retreat back to after they fail to take the castle. Not that the hobbits or the dwarves are necessarily trying to take the castle, but maybe they're showing up to defend it, like we're saying these knights are going to be. I think we're about a quarter of the way through the set right now already. Again, these bags go so quickly, even when I'm babbling about plans for the city, which is helpful. So what I was thinking about this is, in the Lord of the Rings, you've got this idea of the two towers. So you've got like the eastern mountains with the Barad-dûr, Saruman's tower with the giant eye. And then you've got the western mountains, the Misty Mountains, and then vaguely near to those you've got sort of, oh, why are we trapping this frog? Or maybe we're building like a table and the frog is hiding under there. I think it's something like that. So I think we're going to kind of go with an idea like that. So in the far back left of the city, for quite some time I've been designing that mountain. And I think actually the last time we were working on that mountain on stream was at the beginning of the year. It was in January. I've been waiting to get another good opportunity to return to that, and we're going to have that opportunity really soon. I think it might be the first week of January that we come back to working on the mountain. I actually need to go get something else from the display to build into the foundation of the mountain there. So far back left, again, you can imagine the city itself is kind of like it's sort of like it's like a 10 foot by 4-ish foot as the primary, and then there's some other additional areas. So actually, I guess it's more like 12 or 14 foot by like 4 or 5 foot. It's big. So you can imagine in the far back left, because the left section is the forest and the residential, and the right section is sort of the airport and the desert and the industrial, and the center is the city, leading from the downtown to midtown to uptown to boardwalk to beach to water. And that's sort of the primary intention there. So what you can kind of imagine almost in the forest, if the forest is all the left section, the back left section, the very back left, you have the far off mountains, the giant cloud forest mountain ascending into the heavens that we were working on a very long time ago. And in front of that mountain, Saruman's fortress. So you have the one tower over to the left. And then on the right, you have the desert, like the desert of Mordor. And in the far back right, instead of the mountain, you have the volcano, which we've actually completed the volcano. That was a build that we were actually able to finish by combining a couple of sets, including Jestro's Evil Lair. So the far back right, you have the volcano, and in front of that is Barad-dûr, Saruman's fortress. So you have sort of this two towers thing going on. You kind of maintain that idea. And that right there, that's going to take care of bases for two of our big factions. Sort of the orcs, and then sort of the fire faction, I guess. So we'll probably won't decorate. Well, I mean, there's a secondary question of like, do you start to separate the orcs into like an Isengard faction and a all others faction? I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that, but it's kind of cool. I mean, everybody loves towers. Towers are cool. So that's how you get to incorporate those into the city. So now, again, I like the idea of the asteroids being on floating shelves above and around the perimeter of the city with all the different space factions on them. That makes sense because asteroids, moons, planets, we think of those being like up in the air. But I didn't really know how to feel about that for the fantasy factions themselves. I was like, they're not floating in the air. Maybe they're floating in, magic teleporty space, but I didn't like the idea of plopping the fortress in. This isn't StarCraft. The fortress itself doesn't land and start spewing out its guys. No, the guys emerge from the fortress, and they traverse the length of the land, and they come to the castle, and they try to lay siege to it. Pretty cool idea, actually. So there we've just talked about where we're going to put down two of our factions. Some of the others are really easy, too. So like the elves, Rivendell is the primary. I've kind of got two elven bases. So there's Rivendell, which I actually don't have yet. I'm just waiting until they're going to retire it. But that's sort of the high elves. But then you also have the forest elves. So you have sort of like I actually am not using any of the like Lego Mirkwood stuff. What I'm using is the Lego Elves theme, which was a beloved mini doll theme from quite some time ago, from the mid-2010s, that's become very, very popular. Very hard to get a hold of the Elves sets anymore. I don't think there's been any mini... Well, I guess Lego Friends is pretty popular. We just built the Lego Friends set last week. But, like, in terms of appealing beyond the originally intended target audience of being quote-unquote girl Lego sets, Lego Elves was, like, an entirely different animal from Lego Friends. It was popular in a totally different, effective way. Oh, yeah, this frog is just locked in this potion seller's shop. So I like this. I like that they included the potion seller's shop because it really adds like an extra sort of like fantasy layer here that was kind of missing, that might have otherwise been kind of missing. Are we done with this? No, I think we're going to make some more things on this build here. And if you're listening and you heard me make a reference to Dwarf Fortress and now you're listening to this music, yeah, there's definitely some... The way I think about fantasy factions is definitely influenced by that sort of Dwarf Fortress model. You can kind of hear it baked into the language. Yo, the fantasy verse, it's legit. It's legit. It's baked into like the DNA of how I think about setting things up for sure. So... And it makes me happy thinking about it. I'm like, of course, is that happiness going to take me to more Lego building, or is it just going to take me straight back to Dwarf Fortress? Who can know? Who can know? So. what's happening here. Putting this potted plant in almost like upside down. Yeah, I wanted to flip these anyway. There we go. We're going to get that nice clean look at what we're doing here. Okay. Oh, it's because we're building the whole pot upside down. Oops. It's like an earthenware. There. So yeah, anyway, so we said fire faction, we said sort of like orcs and Mordor and stuff like that. We said, so the Naga, I guess the idea is we would put their sort of temple just sort of in our undersea realm, which is kind of its own little thing, and I'm pretty much fine with that. We talked about 2 different kinds of elves, both of which are in the forest. We also have a couple of other factions scattered throughout the forest. The forest is a wild and magical place. You don't leave the city perimeters. You get to the forest, weird things happen. So we have like toads from Mario. We have the hobbits. We have gnomes. We have little trolls. Lots of stuff scattered throughout the magical, mysterious forest, hidden by the many trees. But one of the tricky ones is the dwarves, because we've got that really cool dwarves mine set that I was talking about. Put this potted plant in the wrong spot. There we go. But I did not build the dwarves mine into the Cloud Forest Mountain. If you remember back to the beginning of the year, the faction that I built into the mountain was the Star Wars. I made like sort of the Mandalorian base in there, which is kind of cool. But I don't think that I want to directly connect the dwarves mine to the mountain there, which means that kind of my 2 choices are. What did they do here? I think they did something like this. My 2 choices that kind of remain then in that case are... oh yeah, they just doubled it up. That's fine. I could just shove the dwarves mine sort of in my underground section. The underground section is kind of like the undersea section. It just kind of pervades throughout. And it's not really gridded. And that would be a reasonable place for the dwarves to be hanging out. It's just underground. The other one is I could set it like beside the mountain, and that might be something I do just because I absolutely adore that set. Like the dwarves mine, I just think is one of the cooler sets that ever came out of that Lego Kingdoms. Sort of when Castle and Fantasy kind of crossed over, I just think that was just really cool. So lots of factions there. There's also a question of goblins. Honestly, I'm struggling to remember if Lego has really made that many sets with like goblins in them. Lots of trolls, lots of orcs, things like that, but not so much in the goblin variety. Let's open this back up. And that I'm actually curious enough to take to Brickset really quickly here and kind of think about. We were looking at, especially as we're about to finish another bag. I think we actually just did finish another bag here. So let's see. I like this little playlist, this little fantasy playlist. We didn't have one yet. I'm glad that we took some time to... Everything's falling! Took some time to get that set up at the beginning of the stream. Even if it was annoying that it didn't auto-populate. Still worthwhile. There we go. And then I guess this is going to be off-center, kind of like this. Yep. Definitely. Cool. I mean, it's not actually that stable. Maybe we're going to get... Well, we'll come back to those instructions in a second. Let's look for the Brickset tag Goblin. Let's see what starts to come up. Oh, right. This set. I forgot that this set exists. So if you look in the top right at sort of the web browser we're using here, there's this, which is basically, this is like a forest goblin lair from that same Lego Elves range that has sort of the forest elves. And we get these minifigures, we get these goblins that kind of look like this. They're little guys. And I actually have, I've actually got a couple of these. So if we look at these tags, so now we can just search the Brickset tag goblins. And we could sort by... Oh, I literally only have one set tagged like that, so I don't have a lot of Lego goblins, huh? Let's go back to that tag. Then we can look at ones that I want. So ones that I said I will pick this up, but I don't have it yet. I don't remember how I was going to use this set, so we're going to let that be. What about not owned? Thanks, Brickset. I'm human. So a lot of this, what we're getting is Lego Harry Potter goblins. I've thought about this Gringotts Wizarding Bank. I like the underground section of it, actually more than the top section. So maybe sometime I'll look into just picking up the underground portion, because there's probably some modular building person who is only interested in the top part. Let's go ahead and add that to wanted, just so that if it ever is retiring, I know. You might take a look at that later. So yeah, a lot of what's tagged this way, we're going to see Harry Potter goblins. We're going to see goblins from the Elves theme. This looks like maybe another one. Is this another piece of the Goblin Village, possibly? Let's throw that on there. Here's like, so the Goblin King in classic YA fantasy standards is, of course, a sort of a corrected human instead of a little goblin guy himself. And we have like an evil dragon associated with him. It's kind of a neat set. Might track that. More goblins from elves. More goblins from elves. This is an elf building with a little goblin. Might track that. I mean, I love this theme. Okay, here's the Goblin King's Fortress. This is kind of cool. So if we were going to get the Goblin King, there's this one. And they've got kind of this sickly green. And you can imagine this being in the fortress. But so here in the collectible minifigures series, we've got this guy. And this guy kind of looks like almost like a Spider-Man Green Goblin type of goblin. And I don't think that we have a whole lot of things like this. Let's see if he's got any different tags. So fantasy, villains, goblins. Then here we have goblins from The Hobbit. So these are standing at full height. I always thought this was a kind of interesting set. Very hard to get your hands on now. Obviously, this one is a Goblin Warren. So this is kind of like underground. And again, it's coming with those goblins that are sort of a very different look. Actually, let's go ahead and throw that guy on there. More of those little mini goblins from this Lego Heroica. I mean, I think that little piece is kind of interesting, but I seriously don't know where I thought I was going to get much use out of these little guys. I mean, they're like diminutive. They could be like, just like you have the baby villagers in Minecraft, like the baby zombie. I think that's what they call it. Like, these could be like little baby goblins or something, but I think that's probably not going to get us too far. And then here we've got two more Harry Potter goblins. And then in the classic Gringotts Bank set, we've got another one of the Harry Potter goblins. Are there no goblins in the Diagon Alley set that I picked up? Because I've got the more modern one. Let's look at the minifigures. This is the mini version, right? Yeah, that's the mini version. Actually, don't even remember seeing this come out. Yeah, I remember about this. There's the Gringotts. There's just the Weasley's one. But all through this time, they've still been selling this. Okay, so here, yeah, it looks like in this original Diagon Alley set, which we'll be building at some point in the future, there aren't any, no goblins. No goblins. Kind of interesting. Yeah, I liked this just because it's got sort of that medieval cobblestone idea. I like the first building and the third building. Anyway, that was a long tangent, but what that tangent tells us is that there's no, like, there's not really been a Lego set yet with the kind of fantasy goblins that I traditionally think about, where they're kind of like, yeah. So actually, frankly, the Lego Elves goblins are kind of the closest that we've got, since I actually don't own any Let's see how they oriented this. Any of the sets with Harry Potter goblins yet. So they did something like this. Like this. So I think we need this here offset and this here offset. And then I think it'll go in. Yeah. Again, just a little potion seller's alley. A lot of little interesting side builds here that they're having us get through before we ever get to the main siege equipment, which is kind of neat. It's also interesting that when we finish these steps, they don't have us place the minifigures down in their respective areas. Where did this go? Probably over here. All right. So we've now built 4 of those mini assemblies plus the horse onto bag 10 here. Put away my keyboard. And now it might actually be worth showing sort of that aerial view where we've got, where we can see all these different things that we've built back there. That's pretty neat. What is this? This is the tiniest little bag. Okay, so now we're going to have a cow carrying the next siege weapon that we're going to build. They're interspersing the siege weapons with sort of the various campgrounds. There's really a lot to, like, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck with this particular set. I got to hand it to them. It's kind of neat. Kind of neat. So what I'm getting from this is, since all these, it's nice that all these builds are so distinctive. This is actually a great example of a Lego set that you could build with friends and family, where, you know, you could actually just, one person could start with all those bags that are in the second half of the box, and one person could start with the ones that we've been seeing so far. And, you know, you could just kind of build your way, and you wouldn't really be in conflict if you had 2 different phones to load up the instructions in that format that I don't like very much on the Lego phone app, because, yeah, all this is pretty distinct, pretty discreet. So. I'm just going to vibe to the music for a second here. We've talked about all the big plans, determined there are not, in fact, enough Lego goblins for us. How did they angle this? Oh, okay, if you push it all the way down, you can rotate it. That's neat. Like that. All right, I feel that that was an exceptionally small bag. Oh, so is this one. Like, these two could have been combined. But let's grab our cow. We've got this villager lady driving forward this cattle, looking very, very displeased about the whole situation. I didn't want to go to war. But you're here now. Okay, here's a proper pitchfork. Which I think I've only seen this piece. There's a farmer minifigure that carries a pitchfork much like that. Okay, got these barrels. What's in the barrels, Mary? Tell us, Mary, what is in the barrels? We just want to know, Mary. Another barrel for the back here. It's for the good of the people, Mary. Just tell us what's in the barrels and we'll let you go home to your family. And Tilly's is like, no, officer, he was talking to the Legos, I swear. Nothing to worry about here. Okay, so go. This poor cow. This cow just wants to be home on the farm, creating delicious milkshakes and ice cream, and instead is carrying the barrels of it looks like this is at least not siege equipment. It maybe is like the barrels of rations or something like that. Carrying them off to war. Let's put Mary down here. There we go. Got another one. Now what are we doing? Another bit of scenery. Looks like this might be a mess hall or something like that. I see that there's a barrel full of wine, a table for folks to eat at. And I think this is going to be one that takes us a couple of different bags to build once again. Again, he's setting up all this scenery, which would be driving me crazy if I was doing it in a gridded part of the city. But since this is just going, since now we know this is going into the forest, it's going to be, we're not going to have to worry about that nearly as much. Just kind of allow those curved angles and it's just fine. Which is kind of the reason why I have the forest in the first place, is because so many different sets come with these 6x6 curved pieces. They're like they're a footprint that Lego designers seem to really enjoy using besides just square base plates, which is great for, you know, making everything be not on a grid, and less great for making everything be on a grid the way that I typically like it to be. So whenever I see these curves, I tend to go straight into, okay, yeah, let's drop that right in the forest, just like we did with the tree section of the beekeeper house we were working on last week. Rip it right out, drop it in the forest, move on, keep things on the grid. So All right, now we're building our wine barrel here. Nice big barrel base. And we have a tap in front, of course. No point in having wine if you can't drink it. That's pretty cool. Looks like a nice, sturdy barrel. This may not be a new build the designer came up with here. This might be something that exists in, like, I don't know, maybe Pirates of Barracuda Bay or something like that. Hard to say. Those are all extra pieces. Looks like we've got about 4 more tiny bags left over there, so we'll definitely be able to finish this up. Which is neat, especially with how tiny. Again, usually like a bag is like 8 to 10 minutes for us, depending on if there's stickers and depending on if there's a lot of really small tiling. But for this set, these are really like half bags. Wow, more animals. We've got a dog with face markings, and we got a cute little bunny rabbit. I don't know if I've seen this print yet. It's a very cute little bunny. So yeah, these are like half bags. So I think each of these is taking like 4 or 5 minutes at most. All right. Why the bunny is hanging out near the mess hall, very questionable. We're in medieval times. That sounds like a great way to become a rabbit stew. In fact, this sack is suspiciously rabbit colored, this little white sack here. Almost as if, could it be? Can't let any parts of the rabbit go to waste after all. There we go. Oh, and a rat and a bluebird. Again, like, this is one thing that Bricklink Designer Program sets do suffer from is it's just like, they were just like, again, like every animal that I can, I'm just going to toss in here while I have a chance. This appears to be a waffle. This is definitely a waffle. I mean, unless it's this little pastry here. Yeah, okay, right now we're using the pastry, but right here, this is a waffle. I don't think that we had waffles at this point in time. So now we're definitely in fantasy territory. There's no goblins in this set, but we've got waffles. And pancakes. And big old pie things. Now I want waffles. But I guess no surprise there. Got an axe. We got a rat who's literally climbing up to get to the cheese. Makes sense. Getting lots of extra knives here. Here's one. And we're going to put our utensils in. I wonder when the fork was invented. Probably more recent than we would imagine. Do the Romans have forks? I don't know. Supposed to have 2 spoons. Yes, I'm eating my medieval waffle with a fork and I mean, actually, you know, I guess it's hypothetically plausible that waffles existed in medieval times. It's just not something that I've personally heard of before. Okay, now we got pretzels. Did pretzels exist back then? Pretzels are Bavarian, so they could be German, they could be Czech. What do we got in this one? Bread, 2 different colors of baguette. I thought that Lego had made a new like a new baguette piece, like one that was slightly more to scale than this one, which has been around for a very, very long time. Okay, now we've got a green sausage, a white carrot, so like a leek or something, which is fine. Radish, leek, radish maybe, and then a classic carrot. So the vegetable rations are clearly a little on the slim side, which is why, Rabbit, I think that your days are definitely looking numbered. We gotta have more rabbit and less vegetable to stretch out our rabbit stew. Whoop. I'll put the dog down. So the dog is utterly ignoring the rat and the rabbit. The rat's back here, which is kind of neat. This is cool. I mean, this really, I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with this set. Like, you know, you get a set called Siege Encampment, and you see the picture of what's all in it. But this is really, like, as far as play value is concerned, this one is really living up to the name. Like, there is just so much here to work with. Like, so many different little sub-builds, and it's like the battle pack to end all battle packs, the medieval battle pack to end all battle packs. Again, like, it would have been nice if they would have included a couple of Lion Knights in addition to all these. But again, like, clearly the designer's intent was for this to be paired with the Lion Knights Fortress. They're like, you've got enough Lion Knights already. Although, I think the Lion Knights Castle included like 1 or 2 Falcon Knights, so it would have been nice if the Falcon Knights Siege Encampment included 1 or 2 Lion Knights. Like, sounds like parity to me. I need this tile. I need this. Okay, well now there's a pepperoni pizza. I was going to stretch it for waffles, but we shouldn't even have tomatoes at this point in time. Okay, pepperoni pizza, a waffle. You know, I was trying. I was really defending the set here, but clearly they've used their fantasy powers to transport some of their favorite foods back. Is this a taco? A quesadilla? What is this? I see, it looks like a mozzarella and basil cheese pizza corner. That's what it looks like. So, I got nothing. I got nothing. I feel like we need some seating benches. Okay, here we go. And then tons of extra pieces from all these anachronistic foods. I'll go ahead and probably toss this extra fork and spoon on the table there. Those are typically one of the few extra pieces that I tend to just put immediately to make available, and an extra knife. All right, is this going to be the... Oh, there's a cat. Okay, everything's forgiven. We got a gray cat, y'all. And a goat! Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh. The days when a goat was the literal Lego goat, when there was nothing that you would rather have in a set than a precious Lego goat. This is my first goat in that color, because I don't think I yet have the remake of the Medieval Market set. This is an old peasant lady. So we get like a young one. And she's got a bone, so I guess she's working with the dog to chop up these rabbits and rats and things. Can't say that either of them are doing a phenomenal job, but this goat. All the animals are just hanging around, failing to protect this campsite from vermin. What are we doing? It looks like we're making a small campfire again, because we're immediately recognizing some of the same build techniques we saw for the huge burnt at the stake bonfire earlier. Yes, we will definitely be using that in storytelling. I feel like The designer was like, I know what I'm doing here, but I'm just not going to, we'll definitely be discussing that on the Instagram review at some point. But yeah, it's always nice after a couple of weeks of building those alternate floor plans and combined sets where I need to do extra work after the set is done to just build something where I'm like, nope, you just set it and forget it. Just like building a Star Wars ship. Like I build it, it goes where it's going, and then I move on. Like no extra parts, no nothing. What is this? This looks like a grill. Oh yeah. Guys. Should be turkey legs. It's not supposed to be. Okay. We got sausage. We got red sausage now on the Weber grill that's been placed in this campsite. And we got a nice cast iron frying pan with an egg inside of it. I mean, I don't know, maybe people have been eating this stuff for that long. Oh, we got a whole turkey now. We got a big old turkey. A turkey basically the size of a woman's body, which I mean actually turkeys are pretty huge. You get a real turkey, so that's fair. Put the legs on the turkey so we can eat those. Put the turkey on the Weber grill. Plop that down. Plop that bad boy right down. I really, it's like these people invented time travel, and instead of coming back with guns, they came back with waffles, pepperoni pizza, mozzarella pizza in slices, a Weber grill, which is the first reasonable item on the list, I think. I have to question the choices. It's like the memes of like girls with a time machine. Oh, I missed you, Grandma. Boys with a time machine. We have to stop the fall of Constantinople and get waffles. So. What are we even making here? Is this like a tent over the fire? About to find out. Let's see. This goes like that. This goes like that. Okay, so 1, 2 here. And beside the thing here. I don't quite understand why the grill spit isn't over the campfire, but this like tent thingy that we're making here might be. Oh, it's a meat rack. Okay. I got a nice battle droid arm hanging down with a pot. Okay, so we're boiling some water. That's reasonable. Boiling some water in a honey pot. Then we have a crowbar randomly hanging there for reasons I don't quite understand. We want to make sure the water pot is... Actually, I think I got that pretty well. Straighten that out. Now, I would have liked to see a blue stud representing the water in there. Actually, let's pull one from our extra piece stockpile. I should be able to find one pretty easily. Is that one? Yeah, just get a little water tile to put in the water pot to show what's boiling there. I mean, I guess it's possible there's something besides water boiling, but I think water is pretty reasonable. Put that in. So we've added an extra piece for the first time in this set, but my new policy is I don't tend to record if the extra pieces... Oh, here we go. Okay, again, huge crock pot, but it's not over the fire. It's just nearby. If the extra pieces I'm grabbing... If the pieces I'm adding to a set are literally just, extra pieces, which functionally have a value of 0, unless you're trying to buy thousands of them, ask me how I know, I don't record that. It's just too much effort versus just like, okay, this is like a single little extra piece that's easy to get. I don't need to remember this. Now we've got a fish drying rack. Now this is actually pretty neat. Fish with a couple of different colors. Which I bet that's going to be where the cat is going to be hanging out. If I know anything about cats. Go. Fish. Fish. I feel like they should have like a nice red color fish to be like a trout or something. And I guess they probably do, but I don't have it. Where does this little candle fire go? Probably somewhere in here. Yep, there's the cat. Looking forlornly up at the fish, thinking like, but perhaps I could have a bite. One of these fires has got to be the candle fire. Yeah, I mean, this set is huge. Like, we've really gotten a lot here. Two bags to go. And now I think we're about to get our first, well, our second actual Falcon Knight minifigure here. Oh, we're getting two minifigures in this little bag. This bag is like 50% minifigure. Oh, 3 minifigures. Look out. And another cart, it would seem. But we are out of pack animals to carry the cart, so maybe this peasant is going to have to carry the cart all by himself. Who can know? He's got a nicely trimmed beard, not reflecting much time in the wilderness. He's got a shovel. Maybe it's a squire then, or something like that. And then we build our 2 Falcon Knights. Archers. They're both archers. That's kind of interesting. Maybe the Falcon Knights are like entirely focused on distance warfare or something like that. And that's why they've got the siege weapons. I don't know. Do we have another quiver? Yes. What we have not seen is a Fletcher's workshop. Somewhere with somebody making arrows, which seems like that would be something useful considering all the archers in this faction. This guy's got a fun mustache. Okay. What are we doing here? Another set of stakes in the ground to stop horses from trampling this faction. Should go quickly. And I do like when the instructions separate out sections like this. So, you know, it's been an hour or so since we were last working on these spikes in the ground. So it doesn't feel like I'm just making spikes in the ground ad nauseum. And it definitely could otherwise. I can imagine a battlefield mock-up or something with just dozens upon dozens of these spikes, and that would take quite a long time to put together. Although when you're building the same thing over and over and over again, you do kind of eventually get into a bit of a rhythm of it. Kind of like when I think a little while ago on stream, I was working on my medieval cobblestone roads, which like is definitely repetitive. But again, like when it's repetitive, but it's literally the only thing that you're doing over and over and over again, like you can actually kind of get kind of used to it. Oh, I was supposed to do that 2 more times. All right, bunch more spikes here. Very cool. For once, we have an unexpectedly bigger bag. We're actually going to build a second thing here. Looks like an upturned cart. Unclear. Maybe like they've set the cart on its side to use as a barricade. Or maybe this is the siege piece itself. Like maybe this is just a bit of siege warfare that I'm not really familiar with. The idea of wheeling in wall sections. You can see there's the cutouts for the archers, and we know these guys are mostly archers. And then you can prop it up. Yeah, I think this is just a piece of siege warfare that like I just don't know about. It's not the kind of nerd that I am. It's kind of cool though. Cool idea. It makes sense as an effective idea. You just plug that in there. So yeah, I guess the idea is like again, like this could be the horse could be carrying this, and then like you pull it into place, and then you set it up, and now you've got like a nice little place to like stand behind and shoot off your arrows. That's neat. That's neat. Mobile wall. And our last bag over here, bag number 16. Looks like we're getting started on the big blue tent. So probably the officer's command post if I had to give it a kind of a name. Pull this in from over here. Huge siege grounds, to be sure. Wouldn't want to be the folks who have to repel this invading army. As always, we're starting by sort of just building our foundation, our frame here. Oh yeah, we got a nice red carpet inside. Definitely officers' quarters. Huh. And it looks like they're surveying the battlefield because we have a mini model of a siege tower here, which is clearly something that they would Probably move around the battlefield. So this is like that command tent idea. See if we get a mini trebuchet that we can move around too. We do. No, actually, that's something else. Looks like somebody's writing a letter with a situation on the battlefield, and they're using still a classic like quill and pen. So they did not use their time machine. Waffles were fine, but bringing back modern writing utensils, no. Waffles, yes. Weber grill, absolutely. Pest control, no. Effective advances in writing, also no. Very funny. And there's the start of our officer's tent. And that right there is the halfway point of the set. And I think a pretty great place to kind of pause and just sort of take an overview look at what we've been able to do here. So let's go like this. There we go. So kind of spreading this all out for a second here. Now we really want the aerial view. So we've got sort of the blacksmith area. We've got the mess hall area. We've got the weird alchemist sort of place. We got just a tent for some folks to sleep. 2 of these barricade walls. The start of the officer's tent. 2 animals carrying in siege equipment. One is the working trebuchet that we got to chest out, and the other is barrels of supplies, presumably, with the driver who is apparently very bothered by what's going on. And then we have this mobile wall section, which you can set up and shoot your arrows from behind. Let's set that, make that horse a little bit clearer. There we go. I think this set is awesome. Again, let's pull up the card here so we can see everything else that you'd be making. So we've got the siege tower, we've got the giant catapult, and we've got 2 different sort of officers' tents, or one's the officer's tent and one's the war tent. And it looks like that's pretty much what... and then the siege ladder I can see over there. You think of that scene from Lord of the Rings. And it looks like that's pretty much what we get from the set here. But yeah, no, I'm very impressed. I think that this was a great purchase, a great pickup. And seeing with hands-on, it's really, like I said, like this has made me decide to allocate a section of my forest, of my precious real estate, to sort of ongoing battle. And like, I think that's super awesome. I think that's actually really neat. So I probably won't be finishing this on stream, since again, there's nothing really, like, I now know that I'm not really making any modifications to the set that are particularly interesting. So when I finish the siege functions, I'll definitely have a nice Instagram video showing everything the set has to offer, and probably also some bloopers with the play functions. But yeah, no, we're just going to call it there. Say this was a fun build, and definitely highest marks for the set as a whole. I even learned a few things about sort of the siege warfare, but this was great. Here on Twitch and on YouTube, we'll see you guys next Sunday when we pick back up with the Wild West Train, another Bricklink Designer Program set, like we said.